Thank you very much. A warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining. In this presentation, I'm talking about prepare for the next revolution. And the first place I thought to look was none other than the Oxford Dictionary. What is a revolution? According to Oxford, it's a great change in conditions, ways of working, beliefs that affect a large number of people. And with that in mind, I really can't think of anything else but a revolution that's really happening today. And taking us through the revolution, here before us, there are some quotes that I have from the event itself. Well, let's talk about three attributes of the revolution. First is we think it's going to be hyper-connected. It's going to be about the internet of possibilities. It's going to be something that's going to impact our lives. And it's going to be something that's going to drive sustainability. And then looking back at the actual, what we said on the day itself, is there were some quotes that really came to mind. It's really about sparking a movement, I'm told. I heard that quote over the last couple of days. It's a call to arms. It's a catalyst to change. It's an accelerant to digital transformation. I heard comments about getting 70% of the Philippine population, the unbanked, banked, and 50% of the economy to a cashless society. I heard commitments for carbon neutrality by one customer by 2035. I heard the comment of blowing open doors, a retailer who said it could not open its doors to its customers, so it had to find a way through online to bring the stores and everything through an online environment. We heard another comment around bidding farewell to legacy systems, legacy technologies. And it said, if you do not implement smart technology, you will be obsolete. And let's think about other revolutions. Have we been able to predict, for example, electricity or the steam engine? But now that we know it's going to change our lives, it's around preparing for the revolution, what we can do today to prepare. Well, let's talk about people, because a revolution also needs people, right? So what does that exactly mean? If we can move to the next slide. Okay. People basically says, on the one hand, people is the heart of business. They are the ambassadors. They're very much the front line. We heard that a lot. But people are also difficult to change, especially when you're trying to move to digital first. But we also said we cannot move, we cannot go anywhere without our people. And that's why it was so important to pick up on that comment. So where is ASEAN with digital transformation? We'll move really quick to the next slide. Here is what we're seeing in the lay of the land. What we see here is a lot of organizations on the left are quite not that ready yet, but they're thinking about it. But if you move to the extreme right, you have 10% of organizations that are fully optimized. And remember, digital transformation from our point of view, it's not an IT project. It's the mobilization of people, process, technology, and data. It's about driving outcomes and changing our operating models. That's what digital transformation is about to us. It is about finding the minimal viable product, applying the principles of design thinking. You know, for example, we define, we might empathize with a customer. We ideate, we prototype, we test, we implement. We continuously improve. It's trying to find ways to bring extreme collaboration across multiple departments and divisions. It's the ways of enhancing the productivity of a highly functioning team to a division, to a company, to an organization, maybe to the supply chain, maybe to the customers. It's also to some extent around scaling. So what are the four things that we think we heard of today, if we can move to the next slide? One is we believe we're going to be consumer first. It's all about consumers. And consumers will transact with digital channels in different ways. They're going to be transacting more online than we've ever seen them before. Another attribute is going to be around the agile working. We believe that 80% of the workforce will actually want to stay and work from home as a constant, as well as work from other locations, including the office. And a lot of this stuff speaks to the empowerment or the acceleration of ICT and how digital transformation accelerated. Some say 3 years, some say 7 years, some say an entire decade has happened within 1 year. Another attribute is sustainability. For example, we're going to see the environment and social and governance being ingrained in our annual reports. We're going to measure it. We're going to monitor it. We're going to report it. We're going to share it with our stakeholders. We're going to demand it from our entire supply chain. And that's another attribute that we'll speak of. If we move to the next slide, I want to start with the first part. Here is proof coming from the global data banking and payments practice that shows per capita population how we're moving to an online system. I think you'll see in ASEAN, we exceeded 100 billion this last year, and we're going to go to about 260 billion in the next couple of years. Just compare that with 5 years ago. We were only at half that amount, about 50 billion in trade. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be transacting with a lot of low-touch platforms through our mobile devices in our work, in our lives, and that's part of the transformation. That's part of the revolution. Let's move to the next slide, see what that says. This is around people and agility in an agile workforce. We believe in this slide, if you're going to win the global war on talent, you got to win the battle of employee engagement. We know from reading the Microsoft research, the survey of 30,000 people and trillions of data points, that there's going to be what this gentleman on the left predicted, this great resignation of 2021. A lot of people want to leave their jobs. A lot of people still want to be engaged with their coworkers, and they're going to be working remote. If we have an engaged workforce, they're going to churn the least. They're going to have less sick days. They're going to be the most customer facing. They're going to be the most profitable over the course of time. If we move to the next slide, this is around the whole thing around the acceleration of digital transformation. On the left here is around people. ICT goes around personas. Those people interact with applications. Those people in applications interact with devices. They need different sorts of security posture. And ultimately, this is all going to go to the cloud. This is a multi-vendor framework. This is really around bringing, creating good products, creating good capabilities through the curation of best of breed. But it's around organizations like PLDT about bringing it all together, the system integration, the professional services, and having days like this to inspire others to really see what the possibilities are with the acceleration of ICT and digital transformation. If we move to the next slide, this is around the environment. And here I found so many inspiring quotes around this topic. For example, a retailer talked about reducing inventory from 6 months to 8 weeks to reduce wastage that happens, unfortunately, in the sector. There was something called Protein, People, and Planet. It's about a food manufacturer producing healthier food, doing right by their employees, and driving sustainability in the manufacturing plant. Another conglomerate, a very global, diversified conglomerate, talked about the shift to renewables and how that is very important. It made the commitment to 2035 about being carbon neutral. Another organization talked about a chief sustainability officer that reports up to the executive board, went into areas of packaging, how you're going to reduce packaging, use renewables for dining in, and biodegradable for those that take away. Renewables happening in the manufacturing sites, and how society at large is going to improve the livelihood of farmers. All of this is very inspirational. This happened over the course of the days, and it's very much a pleasure to be there. We can move to the next slide. I want to quickly talk about our predictions, and before we hand off to the panelists. The first off is probably the hardest. I'll start with cyber everywhere. What's going to happen in 2022 is cyber is going to be very intrinsic in our environments, unlike it's ever been before. We've already been using artificial intelligence and machine learning in ICT, but we're saying now is we're going to have one unified chat between different AI sort of automations happening between cloud and networks and security, between business environments and IT environments, to give us kind of an end-to-end holistic view about security. We got to unify these different sort of silos. Security also is going to touch on all these other areas that I want to speak about quickly. One is the multi-cloud evolution. We heard about the advent of hyperscalers coming to the Philippines, but here we're talking about platforming to the cloud itself, seeing the cloud through Kubernetes, through microservices and serverless compute, through containerization, being a place that you're going to put your monolithic applications, stick onto the cloud platform for better business outcomes. Those business outcomes are training like DevOps and getting development teams and operations teams to work closer together, being able to increase the release cycle of new products. And the other thing is around the use of intelligent automation for low-code, no-code automation platforms. This speaks to citizen developers, people like me that have no development experience, but will be part of the development cycle, producing their own applications through these platforms that are becoming extremely intuitive. Multi-cloud evolution is making sure your networks are on-ramped correctly to the right clouds for the massive optimal performance. Next, we move to edge. Edge compute also speaks a little bit around the edge as an object or an edge as a thing, to how to actually improve the application performance of the applications you run in the edge. It's around securing the edge and managing those environments and really making them part of the workload, and not talking about edge, for example, as just a thing that's going to sit somewhere in the ether of 5G, but it actually does something. It's an extension of cloud environments in many cases. It comes with many business models. Companies like PLDT might be looking to open up their locations to host these edge sites as micro data centers. It's there's a lot that's going to be happening around here that's going to be quite exciting. Edge also ties in a little bit with 5G. What we're seeing here and now, what we think we're going to see more of in the future, is the bring your own network concept with 5G. You're going to see it for tactical deployments like day one connectivity, network slicing, load balancing, active and passive connections. I'll use it as my primary. I'll use it as my backup. But you're also seeing it, ASEAN, transform the whole entire manufacturing sector. It's doing things like predictive maintenance, making sure the machinery doesn't break when it's unexpected. Things like computer vision is helping manufacturers decentralize controllers to continuously improve the process of their products as they're being curated and manufactured. Of course, edge, 5G, private networks, all touch at security. I'll mention again, it's interesting because oftentimes with security, you want to keep it on-site, on location for performance, but also data sovereignty, business continuity, disaster recovery considerations. Moving over a little bit left, we have the agile working. This speaks to the employee experience and giving everyone the tools for the trade so they can be very effective and most efficient in their jobs. We're going to have a little bit with more AI-informed innovation, and this is going to permeate across all lines of business. For example, finance may want to do credit scores in real time. IT, for example, may need to know cyber risk and profiles, or need to do a root cause analysis, do data really quickly using AI for better informed decisions. Or as we move to ESG, you know what? We're going to actually be using it to monitor, measure our compliance. How sustainable are we? Are we achieving those objectives? And finally, SD-WAN, my very favorite topic, by the way. SD-WAN is going to move from this novelty of how it's done this really cool things in routing and automation and ability to pop up sites really quickly and take us away from the worlds of MPLS to something pretty cool. But it's actually going to start to really accelerate into the branch and campus conversions. We're not really going to differentiate between our home office, our branch office, and our campus environment. That's all more or less going to be controlled to the cloud, depending if you go with an underlay or an overlay. That's up to the customer to decide. But what's also happening is SD-WAN and security are converging. And it pains me to say it, it's called SASE. We didn't come up with the term, that's why it pains me to say it, but it's a great term to explain the convergence of what is actually happening out there. And SASE speaks to firewalls, it speaks to zero trust architectures, and really everything we need to do to bring it all together as a framework. SASE, I'll leave it here. SASE is not a product, but it's an interesting framework to understand security as security itself gets into everything and more intrinsic than we've ever seen it before. I know we have a panel session going forward, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some of our thoughts.
Thank you, Dustin. Dustin Kehoe, the head of Asia Pacific Research Practice for Global Data. And I love that technology just gets us thinking of all these crazy acronyms. Yeah, SASE is the craziest I've heard so far. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Dustin. Those insights and predictions for the coming year are really compelling. You've surfaced a couple of key words here: cloud, networking, security, sustainability. So how do you see all these coming together for the customer? Because you've given such emphasis to the customer. And what would be the biggest challenge for all the enterprises in ensuring that amid all the revolutions happening post-pandemic, the customer remains front and center of that narrative.
Yeah, exactly, and that's important. I think there's at least a couple of different ways to answer it. We have seen remarkable improvements in data centers. Okay, in the last couple of years, we've seen a plethora of hyperscale, massive facilities going up around the world. I think our count is 450, 500, really significant, large data centers around the place. But as data centers and cloud has grown, its footprint has actually reduced. That is one thing to consider. But the other thing is we are consumers first, right? We need to win the war on talent. Consumers, employees are going to choose organizations that have a commitment that they can measure and read and monitor around sustainability. Think of it that way. Consumers themselves are going to buy products from sustainable organizations. 96% of businesses are really thinking about sustainability when they're making commitments and looking at ways to improve sustainability. That comes from not us, but HSBC. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. Sustainability will always be a journey, not a destination. I think when we hit those carbon neutral landmarks that we all want to achieve, I think there's going to be continuous improvement. But it's one of those things that can be embedded in the psyche and embedded in organizations. And they're going to put pressure on all of us, by the way, including the supply chain of how we design. We need to design greener products. We need to manage our subcontractors better. And we need to do right for the community at large, such as farmers in the case that was mentioned at the about a day or two ago.
Yeah, I love that we say that we're customers first before we're businesses second.